What I'd like to do is I'd like to put this on hold to percolate for a while. I think we've worked this one and given it a good overview. I'm sure there are still some questions, but I think we could stay on this question all day. I'd like to move on to another one, which was asked that one of the members of the panel stated that 6 counties in California do hold released prisoners until daylight. How? Through, I mean, they're rural counties and they do this. The question is, if they're doing it, what system are they using to do it and still make ends meet and meet the law requirements?
Okay, that was the answer that I tried to get from them, and the four counties said that they're rural. There's no transportation at night. That's the reasoning for not releasing individuals from custody. Rural, as in their jail is miles away from a town. They're rural. They're out of city limits.
Like Redway here, maybe, or
pardon?
Like Redway from Eureka type thing, or
possibly, yeah.
Or Hoopa.
So there's no transportation locally that individual can catch a cab, bus, walk a short distance someplace. One county that responded that they release at all hours. It's a large Southern California county that has numerous jails. In their rural jail, they actually release at all hours, but they transport the person into the city and release them in the city. So, like I said before, this varies widely on how people, deal with releases at night.
Perhaps then we can put this on the list of things that really deserve further looking into at another session. Thank you. That's really, I'm glad that you pursued that and did that review. To know that there are 6 other counties out there that are rural that are dealing with the same issue and that have approached it a different way, I think is really important for us. Who pays for cab rides if the checks can't be cashed at night? If somebody lives in a rural area and you say the cabs are provided occasionally, how far do the cabs go and who pays for that at time of discharge?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. I think the majority, well, I can't say majority. I think a lot of the individuals being released from jail have credit cards. I think cabs, I think, take credit cards. The ones that are released with a check, it's definitely an issue. And that's like the sheriff mentioned, we are looking at a new system where we will release individuals from custody with a debit card or Visa card rather than a check. So that could be used immediately. They could go either cash it in at the closest ATM, or they could use it to charge their cab fees.
I think maybe I misunderstood. Someone spoke earlier and said that the jail would call a cab. For example, St. Joseph's, when they have someone in this position, they call a cab and they pay for it. But this is not in the jail. The jail doesn't pay for it. Gotcha.
We couldn't fund that, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but
I understand
that's
now.
Something that maybe the community as a whole we can discuss.
Yeah, thank you. Question from, please, Betty.
But sometimes I get a call by people go out of jail, they on the cab to meet me in the parking lot, then I will meet them there, I will pay them there.
I understand that the jail has an inmates fund from which they bought their television set. Could that inmates fund be used to pay for taxi rides if an arrestee is arrested some distance from his release point?
Yes, we do have an inmate welfare fund, and those funds, you mentioned the TV, the TV was probably bought for the educational purpose. We have educational programs that were mandated to provide in the jail. We have a commissary that needs to be provided, that there's staff that goes along with dealing with that. So those funds are stretched pretty thin as it is. That account is not what I would call an exorbitant account, but it's an account that is used for inmate-based programs within the facility, and we pretty much utilize the balance of that inmate fund every year. I think that the cab issue resources would have to be found for another area to deal with that.
A question has come up about the issue of the 5150 determination. The law is simple. It's gravely disabled, danger to yourself or danger to others. Who determines that at this point in terms of law enforcement, and what training have they had? Could you speak to that?
Yes, all officers in the state of California receive training in regards to mental health issues. One of the problems we have in the facility, if someone is especially brought in under the influence of drugs or alcohol, is the fact that they are not able to be scrutinized for 5150. In fact, the mental health facility will not accept them if they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and it's understandable because they're not necessarily displaying a psychotic episode or some type of mental health issue at the time. Now, when that person is no longer deemed to be under the influence and they're still in our custody, maybe they're at the point of where they're ready to be released, we have on occasion gone ahead and transported them to Sempervirens for 5150 hold. At that point, it's up to Sempervirens as to whether they accept that person in. They do a mental health evaluation themselves on the spot and hold them or not. I think, Phil, you wanted to kind of comment on that?
It's a little bit more than that Sempervirens will not accept. We cannot accept. We are a psychiatric facility, and we're not licensed to provide or admit patients with drug and alcohol as a primary diagnosis or with medical conditions. We're a psychiatric facility. So we've actually been, in the past, we've been more flexible than is advisable, and we've been duly noted by the state that we are to remain as a psychiatric facility. So there's limits there on what the law allows us to do. And again, we are one of the few psychiatric facilities in Northern California, and it's not a facility that the county makes money on, but we maintain that because of our rural nature and the essential services and community safety that facility provides. So it's kind of a half empty, half full. We are a very fortunate community in terms of having psychiatric emergency services and our hospital. In terms of the jail itself, we do offer services, and generally we are there as the psychiatric provider from 7:30 in the morning till 5 p.m. And if an inmate is displaying psychotic or psychiatric symptoms, they're placed typically in a safety cell, and Health and Human Services will see that person on weekends or during the week within 24 hours. And in the meantime, the medical provider, which is the CFMG, which is a contract provider that provides the medical services, monitors them pending our arrival on a ongoing basis. So we do have a cooperative partnership between the medical provider, the correctional staff, and behavioral health in terms of monitoring and evaluating psychiatric patients within 24 hours that are displaying ongoing symptoms.
Before you put the microphone away, another question is, could you elaborate on exactly what constitutes gravely disabled?
Well, I'll give you the easy rendition, and if you need more information, I have my mental health director here, and she can correct me if I'm not reading her notes to me correctly, which are basically they're due to a mental illness, they're unable to manage obtaining food, shelter, or clothing. That would be gravely disabled.
All right, thank you. Another question is that in the hospital setting, if you are given sedation, you must have a ride home regardless of your background or anything else. It's just a mandate that you have to have a ride home if you get sedation in a hospital. The note goes on, in public safety, the 647F, individuals are only held 4 to 6 hours and then released on their own recognizance, while the drugs may still be in their system. The former is a policy by hospitals and healthcare to ensure the safety of the individual and the public. Should not the law also follow the same rule, as possibly 6 counties have done in the state of California? The person who wrote this wishes to call attention to the need for a policy change, and if so, how would we proceed? And I might consider that probably should be added to our list of things to look into as well. The release without repeat blood alcohols or release on their own when in a medical setting, that couldn't be considered because of all kinds of safety and liability issues.
I'd hope that this conversation would include what do we do for our mentally ill people using the criminal justice system to provide safe release from custody or treatment is a bad policy choice, in my opinion. Criminal justice system is a very blunt instrument when it deals with the mentally ill. So Dr. Sattler's question that he just gave is hospitals are providing medical treatment and psychiatric treatment, and when they provide treatment, they have a duty to cause no harm, the Hippocratic Oath. Criminal justice system is designed to deal with criminal activity, and it's not, I don't know how many times I've been called by family members of my clients saying, don't let them out, make sure they get mental health treatment, they need help, get them help. That's not what we should be doing with our criminal justice system. And so I would suggest that the difference is that the jail is detaining people who are a danger to the community or to themselves. And once they're no longer a danger, either because they've completed their sentence that's been imposed by the court, or they've been determined not to have committed criminal acts, they need to be released to the community so the community can have a long-range response to a mental health issue.
Part of that note was, I didn't read, was, is a blood alcohol done before discharge to make sure that they are legal to be released outside and potentially drive away from the jail in the car that someone brings?
Not in all instances. Again, depending upon where that person is placed, if they're mildly intoxicated, they're not combative, they're not a problem, we have a huge waiting room right next to our staff that does the bookings all night, our control area. If they are in a position where they are combative when they come in, then we have sobering cells they go into. In some cases, depending upon the level of intoxication when they were brought in, we may go ahead and check their blood alcohol through a breathalyzer before they're released. Most releases are based upon observations by the officer who have, we just read 2,600 640F arrests last year alone, who are well versed in observation of subjects and when they feel that they can complete the normal functions of a person out on the street. They go through almost an FST, field sobriety type test, before they're released to show they have the language and dexterity issues that are required to be able to function safely in the public.
Hi, Kevin. Kevin? Okay. I understand what you're saying about it being a blunt instrument, but I have clients that are in there that are getting treated by Mark Goldhawk, who is quite an incredibly talented mental health professional. And the problem, I think, what it comes down to is that we have mental illness, we have substance abuse, but which came first, the chicken or the egg? And how do you separate out the substance abuse and see the mental illness when they're so intertwined? And how do we know how to separate the two? I don't have the answer to that. I don't have the degrees for that. I never got my master's in social work. I just went to law school, I'm sorry. But so that's something that I think we need to be more sensitive to, especially now that, like Mr. Gallego said, that it's, we've got drug cases where they're now sitting it out, as if those that would have gone to prison are now here local. But also those awaiting trial for murders and stuff are still there. But also people are waiting to be sentenced. A lot of them have post-traumatic stress and mental illnesses and all sorts of things that led to whatever crime they're alleged to have done. But substance abuse, pre-medication, not pre-medication, self-medication. I mean, it's so intertwined. I don't know how you sort it out. I did wanted to ask a question for Eric Freed's family, which is what we've been talking about. They really want to know about why we can't get people back to where they came from. It's really important to them that I ask this question. And I have to apologize to Mike Downey. I came in while you were talking, so I don't know if you hit this already. We talked about liability of driving them back. We talked about getting them credit card, so they can get a cab. What about, we used to have, and this is before my time maybe, we used to have actual jails in Garberville. I guess we got funding cut on that, and so we can't keep people locally and release them back to the people that they came from. But if there are places sending people back to the city in LA, why can't we do that? Particularly if the officers came from down south or wherever, they can go back to where their beat is, where they're patrolling, and take that person back. Can't they? No? Because of the liability? Anyways, I didn't understand. Yeah, and I might have missed that. I'm sorry, Mike.
Thanks, Kathleen. It's a good question. It's things that we need to talk about. Again, my name is Bill Hans. I'm the undersheriff, and I'm in charge of the jail and patrol operations. When we book someone in, if someone is drunk in public in Garberville, they are transported up to our facility. We only have one facility because we can only manage one facility right now. With budget cutbacks, with all the responsibilities, and the state law says that we have to do certain things within a jail facility. So when someone is booked in our facility, our deputy goes back to Southern Humboldt. He's in charge of that area. We have limited resources right now, so he's back patrolling that area. We can't have them come back and be a taxi service at that point. We don't want them to be a taxi service. And despite what everyone thinks in this room, once we tell someone in the facility, okay, you are free to go, we'd like to know a plan that you have in place. 99 times out of 100, they have a plan and they want out. Even if we offered them a ride, they don't want to ride with the police back to Southern Humboldt. They don't. They want anything to do with us. They want to get out and they want to go and be free. That's the reality.
That makes sense. Obviously, the officers want to hang out for 5 hours while they're not protecting Southern Humboldt. But what about a drunk tank in Southern Humboldt? Is that something we can't afford?
We have to staff. We have to staff a drunk tank. It's not something that we can put a camera on and just view, or a deputy sit there for 5 hours. We have one or two deputies that work Southern Humboldt, and we would have to staff it with a correctional officer, and as well as front office staff. With budget cutbacks, we had to reduce all of our outstations. Hoopaw, Southern Humboldt, McKinleyville. We're centrally located now because of budget cutbacks. And to keep deputies out on the street to enforce the law, we had to make these tough decisions, like close down the temporary holding facilities in Hoopaw and in Garberville. So,
yeah, I just want to add one more thing to that, Kathleen. You mentioned the one county that gave their inmate or their released person a ride to the city and released them there. What they're doing is they took them to the nearest city available. They didn't take them back to where they were arrested. They took them to the nearest place where there were services available and dropped them off there. So the same community was probably experiencing these people being brought there and dropped off. So it wasn't to facilitate them getting back to where they may have been arrested. It was to get them back to the nearest location where there may be services available. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to. We've been talking about mental health and intoxication, but really, what about violent people? That's why I think most of us are really here. It's the idea that somebody can be violent, and you can see this in some people, and then they're let go. When you let somebody out, any reasonable person, I'm sure, if any one of you or any one of us here was let out at an hour like a holiday, after midnight, it's enough to stir the anger in anyone. And to go do that just doesn't seem fair. And I would hope we could do something better.
Just to address that real fast, our correctional officers are trained to read people, and they read behavior all the time. And when someone's released from jail, they're assessing them. They're looking at the observations. If they're drunk in public, they're looking at those objective symptoms, the same objective symptoms that might get someone arrested on the street. Those same objective symptoms they're looking at in the jail facility. They're looking at their behavior. They're making sure that they can walk. They have a steady gait. Their speech is not slurred. And so if someone comes to us and they have a violent tendency, and they are a danger to others, if they have violent tendencies, we believe they are a danger to others at that point, and they've expressed, I'm going to go out and kill someone, and we believe they have the means to do that, we can take care of them. We can take them to a mental health facility, or they're already in a serious offense, and we might petition a judge that these people at this point, if someone tried to run someone over, let's just say, and they say, as soon as I get out of jail, I'm going to go after him again, I'm going to run him over. We have the ability to petition a judge for no bail, and they're stay in jail until they are arraigned. The judge has that ability to not allow bail based on public safety or flight risk. They have that ability, and the officers and deputies have the ability to ask for that, and it gets them to arraignment. Once they're arraigned, the judge has the ability to set bail, and if they are angry and have potential to be violent, a judge can determine at that point, what's the level of bail that I'm ready to give this person? $500,000 bail? And if they have that.
I just want to comment on, well, we're all public servants, the behavioral health staff, law enforcement, the correctional officers. Each one of these guys and women are doing their darndest to protect our safety. And, when people aren't like a vehicle where you can put them on a machine and determine good to go, not good to go, we all do the best we can. And, every officer or mental health clinician that makes a judgment and ends up, in retrospect, hindsight being wrong or something tragic happened, suffers greatly. And I just want to acknowledge the work that law enforcement does and our behavioral health staff does, and the thousands upon thousands of individuals that we treat and monitor each year where things actually don't occur. And just to balance that out, even though we all share the grief of the incidents that when we're not correct in our judgments.